What if I told you the people controlling your neighborhood weren't just after HOA fees, but smuggling bombs and guns across the border? That's exactly what I discovered, and it nearly cost me my life. Before I take you deep into this story of betrayal, shootouts, and secret deals hidden behind white picket fences, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because trust me, you don't want to miss the next twist. Now, let's get into it. The night was too quiet for a neighborhood that prided itself on its safe, family-friendly reputation. My name is Ryan Cole, and I'd only been living here for 3 months, renting a modest house in the Willow Creek Estates, a gated community run by the strictest homeowners association I'd ever encountered. At first, I thought the HOA's obsession with rules was just suburban pettiness: grass no longer than 2 inches, mailboxes polished weekly, garbage bins hidden at all times. But beneath the neat hedges and identical driveways, something far darker was buried. It began with a sound, a low rumble of trucks at 3 a.m. I'd woken up to grab water and noticed the headlights sweeping across my blinds. Curious, I peeked outside. A convoy of black SUVs and covered trailers slipped past the cul-de-sac, heading toward the community clubhouse. Strange, the clubhouse was supposed to be locked after 10 p.m., yet I could see figures unloading heavy crates in the dead of night. I told myself it was probably new gym equipment or supplies for an upcoming HOA event, but then I noticed the men unloading the crates were armed, sidearms visible under their jackets, one even carrying what looked like a rifle slung under his coat. Normal HOA volunteers don't carry rifles. The next morning, I casually mentioned the late-night activity to my neighbor, Mrs. Adler, a sweet old woman who baked pies for everyone. The smile faded from her face faster than a candle in the wind. She leaned closer, whispering, "You didn't see anything, did you? Sometimes it's better not to notice things around here." Then she quickly changed the subject to her roses, as if nothing had happened. That was the first red flag. The second came that evening when I checked my mailbox. Inside wasn't mail, but a warning. A single piece of paper, folded neatly, with just 6 words. "Stay out of HOA business, Ryan." No signal. Tour. No explanation. Just that. My instincts told me to pack up and leave. But here's the problem. I wasn't just an ordinary resident. By day, I worked as a financial consultant. By night, and by true profession, I was a federal agent, deep undercover. My placement in Willow Creek wasn't random. For months, whispers had spread through intelligence circles about an HOA that wasn't simply collecting fees and issuing lawn violations. This one was laundering money, smuggling weapons, and moving explosives across borders, all under the guise of community improvements. My assignment was simple: blend in, gather intel, and expose the operation. But I hadn't expected them to notice me so quickly. The following night, I set up a small surveillance camera near my window, focused on the path leading to the clubhouse. At exactly 2:58 a.m., the same convoy arrived. This time, I recorded everything. When the trailer doors opened, my breath caught. Inside weren't gym weights or party supplies. They were crates marked with faded military insignias, boxes I recognized instantly as surplus munitions. One of the men barked orders. Another used bolt cutters to crack open a crate, revealing rifles stacked like firewood. I kept filming, heart pounding, until suddenly one of them froze, looking straight toward my window. For a chilling moment, I thought he'd spotted me. But then another man distracted him, and they continued unloading. Still, paranoia crawled over me like fire ants. I ducked low, shutting off the camera. My cover was intact, for now. The next day, the HOA president himself, Gregory Harlow, knocked on my door. Tall, perfectly groomed, his smile was politician slick. "Mr. Cole," he said smoothly, "a few residents mentioned you've been asking questions. I hope you're finding Willow Creek peaceful. We take great pride in keeping things quiet around here." His tone was warm, but his eyes were cold steel. That was when I knew. The HOA wasn't just suspicious. They were watching me. And if I wasn't careful, they'd do more than just send warnings. The question was, should I make my move now or wait to see how deep this rabbit hole went? The knock on my door replayed in my head all night. Gregory Harlow's words weren't just a neighborly check-in. They were a veiled threat. His smile had been too perfect, his tone too measured. I'd seen men like him before, in cartel negotiations and organized crime families, the kind of man who wore civility like a mask but held blood on his hands. I couldn't sit idle. After Harlow left, I slipped my flash drive into my laptop and played back the video from the night before. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to identify at least 3 weapons being unloaded. I zoomed in on one of the crates and froze the frame. There it was, stenciled markings with Cyrillic letters, Russian, not just black market junk. These were high-grade military rifles, fresh off illegal supply lines. I needed backup, but protocol required I establish undeniable proof before calling in my team. That meant one thing: infiltrating the HOA itself. The next morning, I attended my first mandatory HOA meeting at the clubhouse. The moment I walked in, I knew I wasn't in a suburban committee anymore. The atmosphere was sharp, rehearsed. Men in tailored suits sat along the walls, silent but observant. The agenda on the table read like a joke: landscaping, pool maintenance, neighborhood watch updates. But I could see the coded language in their glances, the way certain words carried weight. When new security measures were discussed, Harlow's eyes flicked toward me like he was testing my reaction. I played along, nodding, feigning boredom. When the meeting ended, a few residents clustered together whispering. I caught fragments. Shipment arrives Friday. Border clearance handled. Funds ready. My pulse quickened. This wasn't a normal HOA. It was a smuggling syndicate in khakis and polo shirts. Later that evening, while jogging near the clubhouse, I spotted a restricted side entrance. A keypad lock guarded it. Normally, I'd leave it alone until I had the right tools, but instinct told me to take a closer look. As I circled back, a van rolled up. 2 men in HOA security uniforms stepped out, hauling a duffel bag between them. One glanced around nervously before keying in the code. I slowed my pace, pretending to stretch, memorizing the sequence of digits. 7492. Jackpot. That night, I returned. Dressed in black, I slipped to the side entrance, punched in the code, and slipped inside. The air smelled of oil, metal, and fresh paint, nothing like the scent of chlorine and carpeted hallways I expected in a suburban clubhouse. I moved silently down the corridor until I found a large storage room. What I saw nearly made me curse aloud. Stacked crates, floor to ceiling, each marked with military insignias from different countries: Russia, Turkey, even markings I recognized from South America. Bomb components, heavy arms, cases of ammunition, all hidden behind the HOA's pristine community center. I snapped photos, my camera clicking softly in the dark. Every piece of evidence was gold, but then a noise cut through the silence. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, getting closer. I slipped behind a stack of crates, heart hammering in my chest. A flashlight beam swept across the room. 2 men entered, talking in hushed voices. Harlow said the new guy might be a problem. You mean Cole, the finance guy? He's nothing, but if he snoops, we'll deal with him like the others. The beam hovered dangerously close to my hiding spot. I held my breath, my hand resting on the small pistol strapped under my jacket. If they turned the corner, it would be over. Finally, one of them laughed. Relax. Nobody's going to suspect an HOA. They locked up the room and left, the footsteps fading into silence. I waited a full 5 minutes before slipping out the same way I came in, my pulse still racing. The evidence I'd gathered was damning, but now I knew the truth. I wasn't investigating a potential smuggling ring. I was living in the heart of one, and they already suspected me. By the time I reached my house, another note was waiting in my mailbox. This one was shorter and far less subtle. One more step, and you're finished. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a countdown. The second note burned in my hand like a live wire. I'd seen warnings before: cartels, gangs, corrupt officials. But there was something uniquely chilling about the calm, polite handwriting on that scrap of paper, as if the person who wrote it believed themselves untouchable. I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house, every shadow outside my window set me on edge. At 2:45 a.m., the rumble of engines stirred me from the couch. I killed the lights, grabbed my camera, and peered through the blinds. Another convoy, this time larger. 2 trucks, 4 SUVs, headlights off. They weren't unloading at the clubhouse tonight. They were heading toward the rear exit of the neighborhood, where the security gate was supposed to be locked after dark. I slipped on my jacket, tucked my pistol into the holster, and followed on foot, sticking to the shadows. My training had taught me how to move quietly, how to use fences and landscaping as cover. As the vehicle slowed near the gate, one SUV pulled aside. A man climbed out, keyed something into a hidden panel, and the steel gate swung open. Beyond it lay the state highway, and from there, freedom. The first truck rolled forward, its tarp flapping just enough for me to see inside. Crates again, but larger. One corner had split open, revealing cylindrical shells, mortars. My stomach dropped. They weren't just smuggling rifles anymore. This was military-grade fire. Repower. I raised my camera, snapping photos, when suddenly headlights flared behind me. A car screeched to a halt, and a voice barked, "Freeze!" I dove behind a hedge as two men jumped out, weapons drawn. Bullets shredded the leaves above me, wood splintering. My cover was blown. I rolled, fired twice, controlled shots, hitting one man in the leg. He went down screaming. The other cursed and ducked behind the car, returning fire. The trucks roared through the open gate, escaping into the night. I'd failed to stop them, but survival came first. I sprinted toward the woods bordering the neighborhood, the sound of boots pounding after me. Branches whipped my face, but I kept moving, zigzagging until the gunfire faded. By the time I circled back to my house through a back trail, dawn was breaking. My adrenaline still surged, but the realization hit me hard. They knew. They weren't just suspicious anymore. They had tried to kill me. I patched my shoulder where a bullet had grazed me and sat at my desk, staring at the evidence I'd collected. It wasn't enough to shut them down yet. I needed a direct link between the HOA and their cross-border partners. Without that, my superiors would hesitate to act. That day, I forced myself to attend the neighborhood BBQ social, a thinly veiled HOA propaganda event. Families laughed, kids ran around, grills smoked with burgers. On the surface, it was the picture of suburban perfection. But I knew better. I saw the way certain men, those same ones from the convoys, hovered near the edges, scanning the crowd like hawks. Gregory Harlow found me near the lemonade stand. "Mr. Cole," he said, handing me a paper plate, "we haven't seen much of you at these events. I hope you're settling in." His smile was wide, his tone friendly, but his eyes bored into me with cold calculation. I forced a laugh. "Busy with work, you know how it is." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "We like neighbors who respect boundaries. We'll give you one more chance to prove you belong here. Don't waste it." Then he clapped me on the shoulder, as if we were old friends, and walked off. One more chance. The words echoed in my skull. They weren't just warning me anymore. They were setting me up for something. Later that night, my suspicions proved right. A knock rattled my door at midnight. When I opened it, two uniformed men stood there, badges gleaming. "Mr. Cole," one said, "you're under arrest for illegal possession of firearms. We have a warrant to search your house." Fake cops. I recognized the insignia immediately. Cheap replicas, nothing official. My heart pounded. The HOA had made their move. The sight of those badges would have fooled any normal neighbor, but I'd spent years memorizing federal insignias, state police patches, and even county logos. The ones on these uniforms were knockoffs, close enough to trick the average homeowner, but sloppy enough to stand out to me. Their shoes were too clean, their holsters too new, and their eyes too predatory. One of the officers stepped forward. "Hands where I can see them, Cole. We'll make this easy." I raised my hands slowly, buying time. "Can I at least see the warrant?" He smirked. "It's inside the car." That confirmed it. No paperwork, no real authority, just HOA enforcers dressed in stolen valor. My instincts screamed that if I went quietly, I wouldn't make it out alive. The second man moved a step inside, reaching for cuffs. That was his mistake. In one motion, I twisted his wrist, sending the fake badge clattering to the floor, and drove my elbow into his jaw. He stumbled back, crashing into my entryway table. The first man drew his gun, but I was faster. I kicked the door shut, knocking his aim wide, and ducked as a shot blasted through the frame. I led him into the bushes outside, fists flying. The struggle was brutal, raw. These weren't amateurs, they were trained muscle. He swung hard, grazing my ribs, but I countered with a knee to his gut. His weapon fell to the grass. I grabbed it and leveled it at him. Drop the act. Who sent you? He spat blood, sneering. You already know. Harlow doesn't like spies in his neighborhood. That told me everything I needed. They weren't just trying to frame me. They wanted me erased. Before I could press further, headlights flared at the end of my street. Another SUV. Reinforcements. I didn't wait. I shoved the man down, grabbed his radio, and bolted into the night. Shots rang out behind me as I vaulted fences, cutting through backyards. Porch lights flicked on as dogs barked, but I didn't stop until I hit the tree line behind Willow Creek. There, in the cover of darkness, I caught my breath and tuned into the stolen radio. Static crackled, then a voice. Unit 3 report. Did you secure Cole? No response. Then another voice. Negative. Target resisted. He's on the move. Find him, the first snapped. Harlow says no mistakes. Tomorrow night's shipment has to go through clean. We can't afford interference. Tomorrow night. A shipment. That was the break I needed. I crouched low, committing every word to memory. If I could intercept this shipment, I'd have undeniable proof, enough to bring in federal backup and tear this operation apart. But the risk was higher than ever. The HOA wasn't playing games anymore. They'd sent fake cops to drag me out of my house. Next time, they wouldn't bother pretending. As I crept deeper into the woods, I considered my options. I could call my handler, pull the plug, and extract, but that would mean losing the biggest lead I'd had in years. No, I wasn't running. By the time dawn broke, I was back in my house, patching myself up and hitting the stolen radio in a vent. My neighbors waved cheerfully as they headed to work, completely unaware their idyllic subdivision was a front for international arms smuggling. But I wasn't fooled anymore. The countdown had begun. If I didn't stop the HOA's next shipment, hundreds, maybe thousands of lives could be at risk. I loaded my pistol, checked my camera, and whispered to myself, one more night. That's all I had. The stolen radio hissed faintly from its hiding place. The voices gone silent for now. But their message was clear. Tomorrow night's shipment would be the biggest yet. If I wanted proof strong enough to bring this whole HOA empire crashing down, I needed to be inside that operation when it went down. The day dragged by with agonizing slowness. Every smile from a neighbor felt like a threat, every wave like a warning. Even Mrs. Adler, the sweet old lady with her pies, seemed to linger too long on my porch when she offered me cookies. Her eyes flicked to my bandaged arm, and though she said nothing, the way her hand trembled when she passed me the plate told me she knew more than she let on. I spent the afternoon prepping. My pistol was cleaned, my hidden camera rigged with extra batteries, and I mapped every possible escape route through the subdivision. The HOA had surveillance on every corner, cameras hidden in lampposts, drones disguised as pest control inspections. If I slipped up once, I'd vanish without a trace, and the neighbors would only whisper about how I moved away quietly. By evening, I positioned myself near the clubhouse again, camouflaged in the tree line. The neighborhood looked perfect as always. Children playing hopscotch, sprinklers arching over manicured lawns, couples walking dogs. But I knew behind those closed garage doors, men were loading crates of death onto trucks. At 11:59 p.m., movement. SUV headlights cut through the dark. The gate near the clubhouse swung open, not from a guard, but remotely, from someone inside. One by one, black trucks rolled in, heavier than the ones I'd seen before. The ground seemed to shake under their weight. I crept closer, staying low, recording everything. My camera caught the moment they opened the first truck. The crate inside wasn't filled with rifles this time. It was lined with explosives, bricks of C4 stacked like loaves of bread. My throat tightened. This wasn't just smuggling for profit. This was preparation for something catastrophic. Gregory Harlow appeared, flanked by two men in suits. He wasn't in his usual polo and khakis. Tonight, he wore a dark trench coat, his expression sharper, colder. He addressed the men unloading the trucks. Tomorrow morning, this shipment crosses the border. No delays, no mistakes. We have buyers waiting, and they don't tolerate failure. One of the men asked, "What about Cole?" Harlow's smile spread thin and cruel. "He won't be a problem after tonight." I felt my blood run cold. They weren't planning to frame me anymore. They were planning to eliminate me entirely. I adjusted my angle, snapping more photos. Suddenly, the stolen radio on my belt crackled to life. Unit 3, sweep the perimeter. Make sure we're clear. Static. Then a reply. Copy that. I think I saw movement near the trees. My gut clenched. They were coming for me. I bolted deeper into the shadows, but not fast enough. A beam of light sliced through the darkness, pinning me in place. There! It's him! Bullets tore into the trees as I dove, rolling behind a log. I fired back twice, enough to scatter them, but now the entire convoy knew I was here. Shouts echoed, men spreading out in a wide net. Harlow's voice carried across the lot. Alive if possible, dead if not. This was it. My cover was fully blown. I could run, but if I did, they'd move that shipment across the border and no one would stop them. I checked my pistol. One full clip, one spare. Not enough for the army gathering at the clubhouse, but maybe enough for something else. If I could tag one of the trucks with a tracker, I could follow them to the border and call in real reinforcements. The night exploded with chaos the second I broke from cover. Shouts rose behind me, flashlights cut through the darkness, and bullets zipped past like angry hornets. My boots pounded against the wet grass as I darted between the trees, eyes locked on the trucks lined up outside the clubhouse. The closest one was idling, its exhaust puffing like a dragon's breath. I dug into my pocket and pulled out a tracker no bigger than a thumb drive. If I could slap it on the undercarriage, I'd have a GPS beacon strong enough to follow them across state lines and straight into the hands of federal backup. But getting there was another story. Two gunmen broke from the lot, charging straight at me. I fired twice, hitting one in the leg, the other ducking behind a tree. The brief distraction bought me just enough time to slide down the slope toward the convoy. I hit the dirt hard, rolling until I slammed into the truck's rear bumper. My ribs screamed, but I forced my hand under the chassis, slapping the tracker in place with a magnetic click. Got you, I whispered. A flashlight beam swept over me. He's under the truck. I scrambled out just as a burst of gunfire shredded the tires above me. The truck's alarm blared, headlights flickering. Chaos rippled through the lot. Men shouted, some rushing to secure the cargo, others chasing me. Harlow's voice thundered above it all. Stop him now! I sprinted toward the tree line again, weaving through the maze of vehicles. A hand grabbed my jacket, yanking me back. I twisted, driving my elbow into the man's throat. He collapsed, gasping, but another tackled me from behind. We hit the ground hard, fists flying. He pinned me, snarling, "You should have stayed out of this, Cole." I reached for my pistol, but he slammed my wrist into the dirt. Pain shot up my arm. He raised a knife, its blade catching the moonlight. Instinct took over. I headbutted him, stars exploding in my vision, but it was enough. The knife slipped from his hand. I rolled, grabbed it, and slashed across his shoulder. He screamed, clutching the wound as I staggered to my feet. Gunfire barked again, and a bullet grazed my thigh. I limped, heart hammering, and dove behind a stack of crates near the clubhouse. My breaths came ragged, adrenaline flooding every nerve. From here, I had a clear view of Harlow. He was calm, too calm, barking orders while his men scrambled. One of the trucks roared to life, ready to roll out despite the chaos. I raised my camera, snapping photo after photo. Faces, license plates, the explosives stacked inside the crates. Evidence. Gold. But the second I lowered it, I saw Harlow's eyes lock onto me through the darkness. He raised his hand. A signal. Suddenly, floodlights blazed to life, blinding me. I threw an arm over my face. In that instant, every gunman turned my way. "End it," Harlow commanded. Dozens of rifles lifted. I bolted, firing blindly as I crashed through the crates, splinters cutting my arms. Explosions of gunfire followed, rounds tearing holes through wood and metal. One crate tipped, spilling open. I froze. Inside wasn't just C4. There were shoulder-mounted rocket launchers. Enough firepower to level a city block. I didn't have time to marvel. The next volley ripped through the air, forcing me to dive headfirst into a drainage ditch. Mud swallowed me whole, and for a moment I lay there gasping, bullets snapping overhead like fireworks. When the gunfire finally slowed, I crawled through the muck, dragging myself deeper into the tunnel until the shouts faded. My body screamed in pain, but my mind clung to one thought: the tracker was in place. The HOA thought they had me pinned, but tomorrow, when that convoy crossed the border, they wouldn't just be moving weapons, they'd be leading me straight to the heart of their empire. if I lived long enough to follow. I crawled out of the drainage ditch at dawn, soaked in mud, bloodied, and barely able to stand. The manicured lawns of Willow Creek looked almost mocking in the soft morning light. White fences, trimmed hedges, the scent of sprinklers misting the air. It was a postcard of suburban perfection, hiding a war zone underneath. My body screamed with every step as I limped back to my house. I half expected to find it ransacked, the HOA's fake cops waiting inside with their staged warrant. But when I pushed open the door, everything was untouched, too untouched. The silence was heavy, deliberate, as if the whole house was holding its breath. I swept through each room, pistol raised. Nothing. No intruders. But on the kitchen counter I found a glass of water, fresh, beads of condensation sliding down its surface. I hadn't poured it. They'd been here, and they wanted me to know it. I shoved down the rising paranoia and pulled out my encrypted sat phone. The tracker's signal was steady, blinking on my laptop screen. The convoy hadn't left yet. They were still somewhere in the HOA's clutches. I dialed a number I hadn't used in weeks. After 3 rings, a voice answered. "Cole, you're supposed to be dark. What's your status?" "Compromised," I said, keeping my voice low. "The HOA is real. Weapons, explosives, full-scale smuggling. I've got visual evidence and a tracker on their latest shipment." There was a pause. "Do you have proof strong enough for a takedown?" I thought of the crates bursting open, rocket launchers gleaming under floodlights. "More than enough, but they're on to me. They tried to kill me last night. I won't last another 24 hours without backup. Hold position. Don't engage. We'll scramble a team." I almost laughed. "If I wait, the shipment crosses the border and we lose everything. You know as well as I do they've got partners waiting on the other side." Another pause. Then, "Cole, if you go rogue on this, we can't protect you." I hung up without answering. Protection was a luxury I didn't have anymore. Later that day, I tried to blend into normalcy. I mowed the lawn, waved to neighbors, even bought groceries at the corner store. But everywhere I went, eyes followed me. A man polishing his car mirror lingered too long. A jogger passed my house 3 times, never breaking a sweat. Kids played hopscotch in the street, but their parents stood stiffly nearby, staring at me like vultures. By evening, my nerves were raw. That's when Mrs. Adler knocked. The old woman shuffled in, carrying another pie, her hands trembling worse than before. "You look tired, Ryan," she said softly. "Long nights?" Her words carried weight. I studied her face, the way her eyes darted toward the curtains. She wasn't just baking pies. She was afraid. I closed the door behind her. "Mrs. Adler, tell me the truth. How long have you known?" Her lips quivered. She lowered her voice. "Too long. I've seen the trucks, the men with guns. I told myself it wasn't my business. But then, my son disappeared. He started asking questions like you. One day the HOA said he moved away, but he didn't. He never came back." Her words hit me like a gut punch. The HOA wasn't just smuggling weapons. They were silencing anyone who threatened them. She gripped my arm. "They'll come for you next. You need to leave before it's too late." I shook my head. "I can't leave. Not yet. I'm close to bringing them down." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then promise me something. Whatever happens tomorrow night, don't let them win." I promised. But in my gut, I knew promises meant little against men like Gregory Harlow. That night, I sat in the dark, watching the blinking tracker on my screen. The convoy still hadn't moved, which meant only one thing. They weren't preparing to leave. They were preparing for me. The tracker blinked steadily on my laptop screen, taunting me. The convoy hadn't budged in nearly 12 hours. Not a single truck rolled out. That wasn't patience. It was bait. They wanted me to move, to chase, to expose myself. By midnight, I couldn't sit still. I checked my pistol, slid a fresh magazine into place, and strapped the radio to my belt. Every instinct screamed that walking toward that clubhouse was suicide. But every second I waited was another second those explosives sat ready to vanish across the border. I slipped into the night, hugging shadows, moving like a ghost between houses. The streets were too quiet, no sprinklers, no porch lights clicking on, not even the usual stray cats prowling the alleys. Willow Creek had gone dead, like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. As I neared the clubhouse, I saw them. SUVs parked in a neat semicircle, engines off, silhouettes inside, waiting. No crates, no trucks, just bait. My pulse hammered. I backed up slowly, but a voice echoed through the night. "Mr. Cole?" Harlow. He stepped out of the clubhouse, hands clasped behind his back, suit pristine as ever. Floodlights flicked on, and suddenly, the cul-de-sac glowed like a stage. Every SUV door opened in unison. Men in black poured out, rifles raised. Harlow smiled like a man greeting a dinner guest. "We've been very patient, but you've made quite the mess of our operation. Shooting my men, sneaking into places you don't belong, planting little toys on our trucks. Naughty, naughty." I gripped my pistol tighter. "Cut the speech. You're smuggling enough firepower to start a war. It ends tonight." His laugh was smooth, almost pitying. "You still don't understand. Willow Creek isn't just a neighborhood. It's the hub, a system. Do you really think guns and bombs are all we move? Money, people, information. Every gated community like this is part of something bigger than you can imagine." My stomach turned. He wasn't bluffing. I'd stumbled into a machine far larger than one HOA. Harlow snapped his fingers. Two of his men dragged someone forward from the clubhouse. My blood froze. Mrs. Adler. Her hands were bound, her face pale with terror. Harlow gestured casually toward her. "Your sweet neighbor couldn't keep her mouth shut. She baked one pie too many. Now she'll pay the price for both of you." Rage boiled through me. "Let her go." Harlow's smile didn't falter. "You want her free? Surrender. Walk into that clubhouse unarmed, and I might consider mercy." Every rifle trained on me clicked into readiness. I was surrounded, outgunned, and my only leverage was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Mrs. Adler's tear-filled eyes locked on mine. She shook her head, mouthing words I barely caught. "Don't do it." My mind raced. I could surrender and be executed alongside her, or I could fight, risking both our lives in a storm of gunfire. Neither option looked good. Then my radio crackled. Faint, almost lost in static, but clear enough. "Tracker live. Team en route. Hold position." Backup. They'd heard me after all. Harlow cocked his head, eyes narrowing. He'd heard it too. The standoff shattered in an instant. "Kill him," Harlow snarled. Gunfire erupted. I dove behind a mailbox as bullets shredded the pavement, sparks flying. Mrs. Adler screamed. Floodlights flickered as rounds tore through them. I returned fire, dropping one gunman, then another. The air reeked of gunpowder and fear. The HOA had laid a trap, but now they were the ones exposed, and I wasn't leaving Willow Creek without ending this nightmare. The cul-de-sac lit up like a battlefield. Muzzle flashes strobed against the manicured lawns, gunfire rattling through the night as I rolled from cover to cover. My ears rang, adrenaline pounding in my veins. Every shot was answered by a dozen more, the HOA's private army closing in like wolves. I ducked behind a landscaping boulder, gravel exploding around me as rounds chipped away at the stone. Mrs. Adler screamed from where she was bound, her frail body shaking with every bullet that ripped through the air. I leaned out, fired twice, and dropped a man who'd tried flanking from the SUVs. Another rushed me with a shotgun. I spun, yanked him off balance, and drove his own weapon into his chest before pulling the trigger. The blast tore him backward. "Cole!" Harlow's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by sheer arrogance. He stood tall near the clubhouse doors, untouched, his hands clasped like a king watching gladiators fight for his amusement. "You can't win this. Even if you kill us all, Willow Creek isn't the beginning. It's a drop in the ocean." I ignored him, my focus narrowing to the trackers on my belt and the faint hope that the cavalry was on its way. Every second I survived was a second closer to backup. But the HOA wasn't waiting. One SUV screeched into gear, its engine roaring as it barreled straight toward me. I sprinted, diving at the last second. Metal crunched as it slammed into the boulder I'd just vacated, sparks showering the air. I rolled onto my back, fired through the windshield, and the driver slumped forward, the vehicle skidding to a halt. Smoke hissed from the hood, the acrid stench mixing with the night air. Suddenly, a new sound thundered overhead. Helicopter blades, spotlights sliced through the chaos, bathing the lot in blinding white. "Federal agents, drop your weapons," a booming voice announced. Relief surged through me like fire. They'd come. Finally, I wasn't alone. But instead of surrendering, Harlow laughed. "Do you think we didn't plan for this?" He snapped his fingers. The clubhouse doors burst open, and men rolled out heavy equipment, tripod-mounted machine guns, their belts of ammunition glinting under the lights. In seconds, they opened fire skyward, tracers streaking through the night. The helicopter banked hard, bullets sparking off its hull. One round tore into the tail rotor, and the bird spun wildly, smoke trailing. It barely cleared the tree line before disappearing in a fiery crash that lit the horizon. Gasps and screams erupted from the few remaining residents peeking from windows. Their perfect suburban dream had finally shattered into the nightmare it always was. I clenched my jaw, fury hardening every muscle. Enough running, enough hiding. I stormed from cover, firing controlled bursts, cutting down two more of Harlow's men. A round nicked my shoulder, another grazed my thigh, but I kept moving, fueled by rage and desperation. Harlow retreated into the clubhouse, dragging Mrs. Adler with him. His voice rang out one last time before the door slammed. "Catch him alive. If you fail, burn it all." My blood turned to ice. Burn it all. That meant explosives. The same C4 I'd seen stacked in crates wasn't meant for smuggling tonight. It was wired to blow Willow Creek off the map if the operation collapsed. I reloaded, breath ragged, and whispered to myself, "Time's up, Harlow." The gunfire outside dulled into the background roar of chaos as I sprinted toward the clubhouse. My lungs burned, my shoulder throbbed from the grazing hit, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. If Harlow triggered those explosives, Willow Creek would become nothing more than a smoking crater, and everyone still trapped in their homes would die with it. I slammed through the side entrance, the key. iPad code still burned into my memory. The hallway reeked of gun oil and sweat, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. My boots echoed against polished tile as I moved deeper, pistol raised. The first man rounded the corner with an assault rifle. I didn't hesitate. 2 rounds to the chest dropped him instantly. Another lunged from a doorway with a baton, swinging wild. I ducked, drove my shoulder into his gut, and smashed his head against the wall until he went limp. The deeper I went, the louder it became. Men shouting orders, boots pounding, the metallic clatter of crates being dragged. Then I heard it. The faint, ominous beep, beep, beep of a digital timer. My stomach sank. I kicked open a door and froze. The clubhouse's rec room, the same one where kids once played board games and families held birthday parties, was now a makeshift armory. Crates of C4 lined the walls, wires snaking into a central hub where a digital display blinked red. 10 minutes. That's all the time Willow Creek had left. Mrs. Adler was tied to a chair near the detonator, her terrified eyes locking onto mine. Across from her, Harlow stood calm and collected, holding the trigger in one hand and a pistol in the other. "Right on time," he said smoothly, as if greeting a guest at cocktail hour. "I was beginning to worry you wouldn't join the party." I aimed my pistol square at his chest. "Shut it down, Harlow, right now." His grin widened. "Do you think I built all this to crumble at the first sign of pressure? No. Willow Creek is a message. Even if I die tonight, the shipments will continue. Another HOA, another town. You can't stop a system." I edged closer, my eyes flicking to the wires. If I could reach the detonator, maybe I could disable it, but one wrong move and he'd squeeze that trigger. "Let her go," I growled. Harlow pressed the pistol to Mrs. Adler's temple. "She stays. Motivation, if you will. Besides, every spy needs a weakness. I've found yours." My finger tightened on the trigger, but I hesitated. One twitch from him, and she was dead. That's when a crash echoed from behind, one of Harlow's men bursting through the door. He raised his rifle, but I fired first, dropping him in the doorway. The distraction was all Harlow needed. He lunged, firing wildly as he dove behind a crate. Bullets whizzed past my ear, one tearing through the sleeve of my jacket. I dove behind the opposite crate, wood splintering as rounds chewed through it. Mrs. Adler screamed. The timer beeped faster, now under 9 minutes. "You can't win, Cole," Harlow shouted over the gunfire. "Even if you stop this bomb, my people are already across the border. You'll always be one step behind." I fired back, forcing him lower. My mind raced. Disarm the explosives, save Mrs. Adler, take Harlow alive if possible. but time wasn't on my side. I spotted the detonator on the table, just a few feet away from her, too far to grab without exposing myself, but close enough for a desperate gamble. I locked eyes with Mrs. Adler. When I say go, kick it toward me. Her lips trembled, but she nodded faintly. I took a deep breath, leaned out, and unleashed a volley of fire at Harlow's cover. Splinters rained down as he ducked. Now! I roared. Mrs. Adler swung her leg, toppling the detonator off the table. It clattered across the floor. I dove, snatching it just as Harlow rose to fire again. Our eyes met, mine burning with defiance, his seething with fury. I yanked the detonator free of its wires. The timer froze at 8:42. For the first time, Harlow's calm cracked. His snarl twisted into rage. You think that saves you? You think this ends here? I leveled my pistol at him, chest heaving. No, this ends with you. The detonator lay dead in my hand, its frozen numbers glaring up at me like a victory snatched from the jaws of destruction. But Harlow wasn't finished. He rose from behind the crate, his pistol snapping up, his face twisted with rage. The room erupted. Bullets screamed past as I fired back, both of us weaving between crates stacked with enough explosives to flatten the entire neighborhood. Each missed shot threatened to set off a chain reaction that would erase us all. Mrs. Adler screamed, struggling against her ropes. Stop it! You'll kill us all! Harlow ducked low, charging like a bull. He slammed into me, and we both crashed to the floor, my pistol skidding out of reach. His hands were iron on my throat, squeezing with deadly intent. His eyes burned inches from mine, veins bulging in his neck. You don't get it, he hissed, his spit flecking my face. This neighborhood is just one node. Kill me, and 10 more take my place. You can't stop us. We are the new order. My vision blurred as his grip tightened. My lungs screamed for air. I clawed at his arm, desperate. My hand brushed something, the loose wires I'd yanked from the detonator. Without thinking, I grabbed one and rammed it across his face. Sparks flared, the battery still alive. Harlow howled, clutching his scorched cheek. I surged up, driving my knee into his ribs, knocking the wind from him. In one motion, I scrambled across the floor, snatched up my pistol, and leveled it at his chest. Order this, I spat. One shot. Clean. Center mass. Harlow jerked, eyes wide in shock, before collapsing backward against the crates. His breath rattled once, then stopped. The self-proclaimed king of Willow Creek was dead. The room fell silent, except for Mrs. Adler's ragged sobs. I rushed to her, cutting her bonds with my knife. She collapsed into my arms, trembling but alive. You're safe, I whispered, though my voice shook. It's over. Sirens wailed outside, growing louder. Through the shattered windows, I saw black-clad agents swarming the cul-de-sac, securing the last of Harlow's men. Floodlights swept the street, illuminating the suburban battlefield. I guided Mrs. Adler out of the clubhouse. The once pristine lawns were littered with shell casings, shattered glass, and fallen bodies. Willow Creek, the perfect neighborhood, was exposed for what it truly was, a front for horror. An agent jogged up, saluting quickly. Cole, we've secured the perimeter. No one gets in or out. What about the explosives? Disarmed, I said, tossing him the dead detonator, but bag every ounce of C4. This place was a powder keg. He nodded, rushing off to relay the order. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the smoldering clubhouse, the neat lawns now painted with chaos. The truth of Harlow's words gnawed at me. This was just one hub, one neighborhood. If Willow Creek was a drop in the ocean, how many more communities like this were hiding in plain sight? Mrs. Adler touched my arm gently. Her eyes were red, her voice soft but steady. You saved us. That's what matters tonight. I nodded slowly, though the weight in my chest remained. Tonight? Yeah. But tomorrow we go hunting. Because if the HOA thought they could run their empire unnoticed, they hadn't met me at full force. For now, Willow Creek was safe. But the war had only just begun.